In Francis Ford Coppola's classic gangster drama, The Godfather, we follow the aging patriarch of the Corleone crime family, Don Vito Corleone, attempting to navigate through the criminal underworld and ensure the safety and success of his family. Played by Marlon Brando in an Oscar-winning role, Vito Corleone keeps his son Sonny close to him during mob meetings and negotiations so that the hot-headed, impulsive and rash older son might learn something from his father's intelligence and wisdom. But it's that very rashness which causes him to speak out of turn in a meeting with the drug dealer Virgil Sollozzo, known as the Turk. Sollozzo proposes to Don Vito a partnership that would see the Corleones make millions in exchange for protection for the Turk, with Don Vito's political connections and cops on the payroll being utilized. Sollozzo already has the backing of the Tattaglia crime family for his heroin business. He has a warehouse in Manhattan and several fronts located around the city. Unbeknownst to Don Corleone, he also has the secret support of the powerful Don Brasi, and in essence is actually a pawn in Brasi's plan to dominate the narcotics business. What he comes to the Corleones for is cash and protection from police and the courts. However, Don Corleone respectfully turns down the Turk, citing that he felt that drugs were bad for the neighborhoods and bad for business. Sonny's comments, highlighting that he has an interest in this deal, spells to the Turk that if Vito was out of the way, Sonny might be prepared to take his deal, which is why the Tattaglia and Brasi-backed Sollozzo puts a hit out on Don Corleone and almost succeeds in killing him. In spite of his mild-mannered and casual approach in the meeting, Don Corleone is clearly concerned about this Sollozzo character, and immediately after the meeting is over, Vito tells Tom Hagen to call Luca Brasi to come in. As suggested by an earlier scene, Vito isn't exactly comfortable having Luca Brasi around. In fact, no one is. So for him to call Luca clearly shows the wise Don is more than a little concerned. Vito tells Luca that he's worried about Sollozzo, and instructs him to go to the Tattaglia family and say that he isn't happy with the Corleones, planting a suggestion that he may betray the Corleones and switch families. But of course, it's all just a ploy to find out information on this enigmatic Sollozzo. This is what I wanted to talk about today. Vito's decision to send Luca Brasi to the Tattaglias, which is of course what leads to Luca being killed, meaning one of the most valuable Corleone assets being taken out of the equation. And it's only after they take out Luca that they dare to try and assassinate Vito. A while back, I made a video on Luca Brasi where I provided some more information about the character, using stuff from the books mainly to highlight what a dangerous man he was. Feared by everyone and known for his brutality and unwavering loyalty to Don Corleone. And not even the Corleone family, but to Don Corleone specifically, as suggested by Tom Hagen's line, "Even Sonny won't be able to call off Luca Brasi." And many people on that video commented on Vito's decision to send Luca Brasi to the Tattaglias as a very uncharacteristically stupid decision, which got me thinking, and is why I made this video, to discuss this decision made by Vito. I'm not here to argue for or against the decision, I just want to have a casual discussion about it. It's important to give context to this entire sequence of events. At face value, it looks like Don Vito wanted more information about Sollozzo, sent Luca Brasi to sniff around, and when he does so, he's killed on the spot immediately. Now, that definitely does make it look like Vito miscalculated heavily, and that Luca Brasi might not be all that he's cracked up to be. But if you pay attention to the scene where Luca, Bruno Tattaglia and Sollozzo talk, Sollozzo says in his native language, "You have been talking to the Tattaglia family, right?" This implies that this isn't the first time Luca Brasi has been around here, and alludes to events in the book where Luca actually hangs around the bar for much longer, as Mario Puzo's The Godfather tells us. Luca Brasi had made contact with the forces of Sollozzo several months before. He had done so on the orders of Don Corleone himself. He had done so by frequenting the nightclubs controlled by the Tattaglia family and by taking up with one of their top call girls. In bed with this call girl, he grumbled about how he was held down in the Corleone family, how his worth was not recognized. After a week of this affair with the call girl, Luca was approached by Bruno Tattaglia, manager of the nightclub. The first meeting was all above board, Tattaglia offering him a job to work in the family business as enforcer. The flirtation went on for nearly a month. Luca played his role of man infatuated with young beautiful girl, Bruno Tattaglia the role of a businessman trying to recruit an able executive from a rival. At one such meeting, Luca pretended to be swayed and then said, "But one thing must be understood. I will never go against the Godfather. Don Corleone is a man I respect. I understand that he must put his sons before me in the family business." The general idea had been to lead the Tattaglias to believe that he knew about the lucrative narcotics operation and that he wanted a piece of it freelance. In that fashion, he might hear something about Sollozzo's plans if the Turk had any, or whether he was getting ready to step on the toes of Don Corleone. After waiting for 2 months with nothing else happening, Luca reported to the Don that obviously Sollozzo was taking his defeat graciously. The Don had told him to keep trying, but merely as a sideline, not to press it. So all that's from the original Godfather book, so as you can see, this was actually a slow, methodical process. It wasn't as if Luca walked into the bar and declared, "Put me in, coach." He was there for a long time, allowing people to get used to him, talking around, so that Luca eventually suggesting that he's not too pleased with the Corleones would feel like more of an organic and natural thing to happen. We all moan about our bosses sometimes, but maybe a Tattaglia soldier picked this up over a couple of drinks with Luca, or the girl that Luca was sleeping with told a soldier or something, he told his capo, a few people started having more serious conversations with Luca, until it all got to a stage where Luca would come face to face with Philip Tattaglia's son Bruno, and eventually the man himself, Sollozzo, or that was Brasi's plan anyway. And it worked, only of course, either the Tattaglias and the Turk got wise to Luca's plan, or they figured it was just best if Luca wasn't around when shit hits the fan. After all, what if he double-crossed them after the hit on Vito? There's very good reasons the Corleone opponents wanted Luca Brasi out of the way before they went for Vito. Brasi is a vicious psychopath, whose backstory is heavily expanded upon in Mario Puzo's novel The Godfather and Ed Falco's Godfather prequel, The Family Corleone. Luca Brasi has a history of violence. He murdered his neighbor by pushing him off a rooftop, he killed his own dad for abusing his mother, and he was feared for his sadistic methods and apparently unstoppable nature even by the likes of Giuseppe Mariposa, the bosses of all bosses in the 1930s and the most powerful gangster in New York. He ran his own small crew independently from all the major mafia families and all kept wary of Luca Brasi. Luca impregnates an Irish girl, and when the child is born, he has a midwife throw the baby into a furnace and then allegedly kills the mother also. After a failed suicide attempt which heavily affected his speech and is said to have given him brain damage, he is recruited by Don Corleone and develops an unshakable sense of loyalty to Vito, and is instrumental in ending the olive oil wars of the 1930s. One notable incident involves him kidnapping 2 men sent to kill Vito and then chopping the first into pieces, hacking off first his feet and then his knees, etc., which was so horrifying the second man swallowed his own gag and died before Luca started on him. None of this is included in the movie, but when you take it into account, you can clearly see that Luca Brasi is not someone you want to mess with. You can see both why Sollozzo would want him out of the way and why Vito would see no problem with sending Luca on the job. I mean, this is a guy who once got shot point blank, and because of a special body armor he wore, in addition to the fact that he's just a tough, mean motherfucker, he got up and walked away. So the sadism of Luca Brasi isn't in the movies to give the proper context of why the man is so feared. In fact, he's actually quite endearing in the movie, given the way he fluffs his lines even after practicing them. But what is included is his loyalty to Don Vito. So the point still stands that it was a bizarre and quite frankly dumb move on Vito's part to send Luca of all people to pretend that he wants to betray the family. He could have sent anyone, Clemenza maybe, who wasn't afraid to speak out against Vito's decisions. Not Sonny obviously, even though he could potentially be seen as going against his father, but his problem is he's too temperamental and would probably do something to get himself killed. Vito's way too protective of his children anyway to put his son in that position. But the one man you don't send when you want his loyalty to be seen in question is Luca Brasi. So it seems there is truth to Sollozzo's statement when he says the Don was slipping. It seems it was just that, a slip on Vito's part, a mistake. Hey, we all make them, even the great Don. Maybe his tenure as the most powerful gangster in New York made him complacent. Although, think about it this way. Luca Brasi is the battering ram of the Corleone Empire. He killed so many people for the family but was never made a capo, which could be seen as a slight in the underworld. Sollozzo's deal was so good that Sonny jumped the gun at the meeting and showed his overexcitement, so I imagine it might not be too far-fetched for people to believe that the unappreciated Luca Brasi might consider turning. And at the same time, you have to see things from Vito's perspective. Some narcotics dude comes up to you and wants to make a deal. You don't want to, so you say no. But he has the backing of a rival family, which suggests he is high up, he's got connections, so he's worth checking out, just to make sure he won't be stepping on any toes in the future. Yes, Don Corleone is a cautious man, but surely he had no reason to think that this drug dealer would kill his best enforcer and then try to kill him. The attack comes completely out of nowhere, and that's because Don Vito didn't have the full picture. He wasn't aware until a long time later that the mastermind behind the plan to have Vito's political and police connections was Don Brasini. Had he known that initially, it would have changed everything. Vito had no regard for Philip Tattaglia. He considers him weak and his prostitution business sickening. Brasini, on the other hand, is far more intelligent and orchestrated another mastermind of a plan years ago, which almost resulted in him becoming the most powerful gangster in New York and the entire Corleone family, women and children and all, being wiped out. But that's a story and video for another day. So yes, Vito wasn't at his optimum level here. He wasn't as careful as he usually is, but he didn't know the full backing that Virgil Sollozzo had, didn't think they had the balls to kill Luca Brasi, and Brasi, can take care of himself. The only real solid clanger that Vito made was telling Luca to make out that he wants out of the family. No one would really believe that, you'd think, though I suppose if he sold it well, a man like Brasi, who before he was part of the Corleones prided himself on being his own boss, being able to pull it off. In fact, in some ways, sending Luca Brasi to see what's up actually highlights Vito's intelligence, not his negligence, because other dons may have just dismissed this Sollozzo fella and called it a day, think nothing of it until the Turk came back to bite everyone in the ass. But Vito recognized something in the man that got him worried enough to send his best enforcer on the job. The real fool of this entire endeavor, if any, is not Vito, but Luca himself. Why would Vito Corleone have any reason to think that Luca Brasi, who has been compared to the devil in the books, would have a problem defending himself if things went tits up? It's Luca Brasi, strong as a horse, completely fearless, unkillable, who is caught unaware by only 3 guys, one pinning his arm down and the other garroting his neck. Okay, sure, he had a knife that was inside his hand and made his hand stuck, which I've heard can be pretty distracting and possibly painful, but you would think that even in that extreme situation, because this is a man who's been in many extreme situations, he'd be able to throw off the 2 guys on him and turn on the beast mode. Now there's 2 characteristics of Luca Brasi that come to mind when reading The Godfather and the Family Corleone, which is the prequel to The Godfather. The first is that Luca has a very high opinion of himself. At the very least, he did so before he went all brain dead. Luca enjoys his reputation as a demon, enjoys striking fear into the hearts of strong men. So maybe he got caught up in his own hype. He didn't think anyone would have the balls to make a move on him. The second thing that comes to mind is that Luca Brasi doesn't care whether he lives or dies. In fact, in the novel The Godfather, Don Corleone even says that a man like Luca Brasi walks around begging to be killed. Let's not forget he tried to kill himself once upon a time as well. I can tell you stories from the books where he's walked into rooms where his enemies are, enemies with guns, when he himself doesn't have any, and he's the only one to walk away alive. Now, in that situation, if Luca had got killed, we'd all call him stupid, but since he didn't, we call him a badass. So really, this is one situation of many where Luca Brasi has been unorthodox and gone into a boxing ring without his arms raised in defense, and this time the sucker punch his opponents threw actually killed him. And because this is the only real thing we see Luca Brasi do in the film, i.e. die, it makes him look like a bit of a tool, when in fact this situation's result was an anomaly, and 9 times out of 10, Luca Brasi would have been the one to walk away from that hit, and there would have been instead 3 dead bodies splayed on the floor, the Turk being one of them. Interestingly, because Vito's plan to send Luca to feel out the Turk was so dumb, I've heard theories that Vito actually sent Luca to his death on purpose, as in, the guy is such a maniac and has done so many depraved things that he wanted to get rid of him. But personally, I don't think that theory makes a lick of sense. Yes, Vito wasn't exactly jumping for joy when he learned that Luca killed the baby, but he made a decision to use this psychotic individual as a weapon against his enemies. He might not like him, but Luca is one of the reasons Vito rose to where he did. To suggest that all of a sudden Vito wants to kill Luca, and at the hands of his enemies, making the Corleones not just look weak but actively weaken the family, makes absolutely no sense to me and seems to be just an excuse for the fact that Vito, despite being the brilliant strategist that he is, made a bad call. It will be interesting to know what Don Corleone himself thought about Luca Brasi's death and whether he felt he made a poor decision in sending Luca. I don't remember any lines in the book referencing this. Of course, Vito was a bit busy trying to survive after being bullet-ridden. Maybe his later line, "Women and children can be careless, but not men," and the dismissive, almost irritable way he says this Sollozzo business in the meeting of the five families, is him expressing some kind of subconscious admission that he was at fault in the Luca situation. In fact, Vito must know in hindsight, if he had been a bit more characteristically careful, Luca may not have died, the five-family war might not have happened, Sonny might not have been killed, and Michael would have stayed out of the family business as he wanted. In fact, when you consider the overall trajectory of the Corleone family post Vito's near death, Luca dead, Vito past his prime, Sonny dead, the family's closing in on the Corleones, it's not too far-fetched to think that the Luca situation was the beginning of the end of the Corleones and they were actually on their way out, and it was actually the unexpected ruthlessness and intelligence of Michael Corleone which eventually saved the family. A bit off topic here, but this entire situation is actually repeated in The Godfather Part 3, if you remember, with Michael Corleone sending Vincent to Don Altobello to pretend he has turned against Michael. But in that film, the plan more or less works. But that's probably because the characters are just a lot more dumber in that film. So what do you guys think? Are you of the opinion that Vito made a strategic blunder in sending Luca Brasi to the Tattaglias? What's your opinion on all of this? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.